If you want a steak with a big fat crust that has flavor that no other steak does, then try this Triple Seared Steak Method.
A big thanks to zelux for sponsoring this episode.
If you're like me and you have a bit of a steak fetish, then you're always looking for the next best thing. And over time I come to realize that tender steaks is not really the ultimate dream of steaks. It's just a really nice feature. But there's more to steaks than that. You gotta have good flavor, and you want to have a nice crust. And the good flavor and the crust go really well together. And that's what this method is for. And that's why I got myself a nice big chunk of ribeye. We're going to cut this up ourselves into steaks, and then I'm going to show you my favorite way to make a really insane, crazy, juicy, tasty, crunchy, crispy. Basically, it's just a steak that has all the good features. The ribeye is a bit of a luxurious steak, but there's a good reason why I chose this, because this ribeye has two main features to it. As you can see, it's got beautiful dark red meat, and maybe even more important, you got that intramuscular fat. And that intramuscular fat is going to make your steak taste juicy and flavorful. This comes from a special mix out of the Netherlands, and it's a local fed and grown piece of beef. It's a mixture between Black Angus and Holsteiner, which is our dairy cows. We got our cheese, we got our milk, we got everything dairy. It's the one thing we eat the most, and so we gotta have a little bit of that cow mixed up with Black Angus. And if you combine that with the great feeding program, you're gonna end up with a beautiful product like this. Personally, I like 2.5 fingers thick, so we're really close to a roast, but not quite. Oh, look at that. That is a good looking steak. Of course, I'm gonna slice a couple of these. Look at the amount of fat that sits in this meat. Every time I see this, I'm just starting to smile. So gorgeous. Do you know how much effort went into creating this? Please show some love for this beautiful steak. I selected 3 beautiful steaks for the recipe today, and the rest of the steak is going to go in my freezer for the next time. I think when that rainbow hits the ground, it's probably gonna hit my roof just because of the steaks in my freezer. As you probably already noticed, I got a little fire going on next to me. I'm fortunate enough to be able to test this barbecue because it's new on the market, and as the name says, zelux is very luxurious. This thing is insane, and it burns super clean. It has a special technique where it rotates the air around in the barbecue, leaving you nothing but heat and no smoke at all. Another cool feature of this grill is that it has a stainless steel cooking plate, which means we don't have to worry about maintenance. Of course, the design of this thing also does a lot, and it looks fantastic. The other day I had some friends coming over, they were checking out the barbecue. They were super impressed by the looks of this grill. Fired it up by laying down some small pieces of wood, building it up, adding some fire starters, then lighting it up and adding more wood to it. I let the wood burn down into embers, then I added more wood to the fire to build it up so that I have a stable base to work from. So that you can then add a chunk of wood every 15 minutes to about half an hour, depending on how much heat you need. To prepare the barbecue for cooking, I'm gonna put a little bit of sunflower oil on. And as you can see, it's still pretty hot. Wear gloves. So for now, I'm just gonna let it cool down a little bit more. Then I'm going to apply a layer upon layer with sunflower oil, seasoning it so that it becomes a super nice and non-stick layer on top of that stainless steel. I'm also gonna place on this food guard, and that will prevent food from sliding off the grill grate into the fire. And on top of that goes another stainless steel grill grate. And the cool thing about this is that it has a special handle for tongs so that you can lift them up, add some more wood. Now I can put a heavy pan on this and I can make a soup, or you can put a wok on this, be stir frying, maybe some skewers. There's loads and loads of things you can do with this setup. But before we get into that any further, I'm gonna focus on my steaks. So I'm going to do my preparation work first, and there's 2 parts to this. One is gonna be very simple, and I'm going to need that not for the steaks, but for something different. A little bit of good soy sauce, about 2 to 3 tablespoons, and what that is exactly for, I'll show you later on. I'm also gonna add a tablespoon of sriracha. Mix that up, taste it. The other part of preparation is going to be a mayonnaise. I know some guys are not into mayonnaises, but this is not just for eating. It's like part of creating something delicious. That's about a cup of mayonnaise. I'm going to add a tablespoon of dried parsley to it, a tablespoon of dried oregano, 2 tablespoons of PITMASTERX classic seasoning, and a clove of pressed garlic. Ooh-wee. Mix that up, taste it. That is freaking delicious. Before I'm going to cook the steaks, I'm going to put on some side dishes. Now this is duck fat, and duck fat is extremely tasty. I have some potatoes here, pre-cooked in the skin. I'm going to put them down and I'm going to press these. Of course, I'll need to season them. I'm going to put on a little bit of PITMASTERX beef seasoning, which is a nice barbecue style flavor. While I wait for the crust to form on these potatoes, I'm going to put on some pak choi. I expect the leaves to burn up a little bit, but I want the edges to be nice and crisp, so I'm going to lay that towards the hottest part of the fire. And then the pak choi, on which we're going to put that soy sauce with the sriracha. Super easy to do, and once I got my side dishes out of the way, it's time for the steaks. Now if we take a look at these steaks, they got a beautiful fat cap laying on top of them. And that's what I'm going to use to season the stainless steel cooking plate with. Listen to that sizzle. You can hear it build up, that beautiful sizzle. Now the cool thing about doing this is you're rendering down the fat, which makes it more enjoyable to eat. You're seasoning the cooking plate with it. At the same time, you're adding flavor to your cooking surface, which will also help fry up the crust on the steaks. Now once you got that good crust, you can lay them down in their own fat. Just make a little bit of room, place it down. First, the steak is going to hit the stainless steel and it's just going to soak up all the energy, which will make it connect to the stainless steel. So about the first 30 seconds, you won't be able to lift it up without tearing off the crust that you're trying to build up. So just for the first 30 seconds, just let it lay there. I'm going to do the same for the other ones. Create a little bath and then place it down. After 30 seconds, it's time to flip the steak. You see that it gets detached very easily. Flip it around, look at that crust. Now there's a lot of heat coming from the fire side, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the steak with the fat pointing towards the fire. So it will render down the fat in the steak, which is important to us because it makes it more enjoyable to eat. Now I'm just going to keep checking that crust and it looks so freaking amazing. Now remember, we did the first sear now. Now we're moving on to the second sear. I want to see beautiful brown steaks all throughout. Let's take a look at that. That's what I'm looking for, but it's not enough. I want more crust buildup. There's some parts on the steak that haven't browned as much as other parts, so I'm going to add a little bit of my sunflower oil, and that's going to go underneath and in the steak. It's going to help the steak build up that crust. Basically, it's go underneath. It's just going like bubba 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 bubba, steaming, flaming, building up flavor. And that's for the second sear. All the while cooking, I'm checking the core temp on my steaks. And this one is 33 degrees Celsius. I'm just looking for the lowest temperatures, 37. So the core is still cold while the outside is really, really hot, which means if I'm gonna let it rest, it's just gonna shoot up higher. So we got a little bit time left for our third sear. And look at that crust. We're now in our second sear. I'm getting ready to do the third sear. And the way that I'm going to do that is with the mayonnaise we just made. I'm going to brush that on top of the steak. Now mayonnaise is oil-based, so all we did is add flavor to oil, and that's what we're going to use to do the last bit of frying on the steak. What the flip, bro? Look at that! And that is your third sear with seasoned mayonnaise. Now you can add anything you like to this. You can add some chilies, you can add some coriander. All right, last sear. Now it's time to take the steaks off because we got beautiful crust. We got loads and loads of flavor. After 10 minutes of resting, it's time to start slicing into these steaks and take a closer look. But before we do that, let's appreciate this crust. That's 1, 2, 3. Now let's take a look inside. I'm gonna make a little plate here with our potatoes and vegetables. Let's get that steak in. We're gonna need lots and lots of steak. There we go. All right, let's give this a try. A grill like this just makes a crust unlike any other grill. It's a wood fire grill, so it's fun to cook on, and it's like bam, 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 you're going around and just having a good time. But then you create food that has crisp and crust unlike anything else you've ever tasted. And with the triple sear method on the steak, that's how you get an exceptional crust on your steak. Because this tastes freaking delicious. And these vegetables, they taste insane too. They have loads and loads of flavor. Not like the ones that you used to. See you guys in the next video.